That was Green Day's 21 Guns. Welcome to Students' Guide to the Galaxy on Insanity 103.2. I am Martyn.
And I am Ryan. Disclaimer, this show, while trying to stay as factually accurate as possible, is for entertainment purposes. In reality, we're a couple of physics students that love all things sciencey but don't always understand them. This means that information could not be accurate, but when not ranting off topic, sources will be listed.
And on that note, here's some Arctic Monkeys. That was Billy Joel.
This is Insanity Radio, 103.2 FM.
With Uptown Girl. So, Ryan, this week on Students' Guide to the Galaxy, what have you got for me?
Today, and this week on Students' Guide to the Galaxy, we are going to be talking about Mars.
Mars. As in that red planet, yeah?
The big red planet we started talking about last week.
The one that Elon Musk is beaming internet to.
Yep,
right,
and also becoming the overlord of, slowly but surely.
Definitely.
We're talking about it because on Saturday, on May the 5th, there was a rocket launched towards it carrying the InSight probe.
The InSight probe?
The InSight probe.
What is it inciting?
It's taking an insight into the core of the planet and how the tectonics and the core of the planet are working.
So how does it, aside from, I don't know, tunnelling down, I assume it's not going to?
It is actually going to tunnel down. Yes, it's going to tunnel down the furthest we've tunneled down in history of searching for Mars.
So how deep is that then?
I honestly do not know.
Do you not know?
No, I didn't look that one up ahead of time. But it's going to dig into the mantle, into the crust, not to the mantle, and measure the heat flow inside the planet. So, InSight. Are you ready for what it's short for? Because scientists are good.
There's a whole name for it?
There's a whole name.
Okay,
InSight is not the name. InSight is the acronym.
Really?
It's Interior Exploration Using Seismic Investigations, Geodesy, and Heat Transport.
It's a bit of a mouthful. I can see where they went with InSight.
Yeah. Scientists aren't great at naming things in general, though.
Not really.
No.
Oh, well. So what is to be gained from this? I mean, it's a load of rock, right?
Yeah, it is a load of rock floating through space, but it's a very interesting load of rock because it's planet-sized, and so that means it's going to support a core. And as we've measured before, it has a mantle and tectonic plates that are still moving because there is a few volcanoes on Mars, or there were some long dormant volcanoes.
Did you know? Fun fact about Mars for you: when it's always been called the red planet, and when NASA got some amazing pictures of Mars with a really really high end satellite, it didn't look very red.
Oh,
so
no.
they actually, in the photos they released to the press, they actually pushed up some of the red hue to make it look a bit more red.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Don't quote me on that. I heard that from someone, and I'm not sure if I believe them or not. But if it is true, it's funny. If not, well, it's funny, I guess.
Yeah. So what InSight's going to do is it's bury a probe into the surface, and as NASA have very flashily put it, it's going to measure a couple of things about the planet. It's going to measure the what they call the reflexes of the planet, which is how the mantle is moving. Right. It's going to measure the sorry, let me find this. I've put this in entirely wrong place. It's going to find out about the dynamo of the planet, the long...
I take it you don't mean the magician.
No, but it does act as a magician. It keeps us all safe in a magic way on Earth, but we'll talk about that a bit later.
Magic way on Earth. Stay tuned for how Mars magically protects us.
Yeah, no, but it's going to measure how the mantle is flowing underneath it, and so it can figure out seismic activity, which is...
That sounds very fancy.
It's just earthquakes and how the mantle moves and how that makes the crust move.
So how long is it going to be searching for? Because it can't be 2 weeks. I mean,
no, it's going to be many years. It's a proper fully fledged Mars probe. So it's going to take a long time to take all the data, like Curiosity has. Unlike Curiosity, though, interestingly, it's going to be entirely solar powered rather than being powered by nuclear power, like most probes are. Most probes are powered by an RTG, which is a radioisotope thermal generator.
That sounds extremely sciencey, and it sounds like a lot of people spent a long time working that out.
It's just some plutonium in a battery making heat. It's just
When
a
you put it
lump
that
of
way, it's
plutonium.
less exciting. Stick with the first one. That one's
I shall.
You know, some of the probes on Mars, they have a bit of code in them that tells them to sing happy birthday to themselves.
That's
on the
most
their
lonely
birthdays.
thing, and
It's
also
so
the most
sad.
awesome thing.
It's
I've
really
heard.
cute, but I feel really bad for them because they're just spending their birthdays alone on Mars. But yeah, and I also like to imagine there's some little Martians just wandering around Mars, and they just hear
Just a happy birthday
tunes of
song.
happy birthday playing
Slightly
across the
muted
planet.
because the atmosphere is not
Yeah,
as
cool.
thick, so it's just a very slight on the wind happy
Very,
birthday.
very, very quiet. And he's like,
Yeah.
what is that? It'd be very confusing.
And so, one of the reasons we're studying the core and the mantle of the planet of Mars is so we can learn about, obviously, a bit more about our planet, because we have an interior which is relatively similar, and that's going. And if we can get the planet, if we can study Mars's planet's core, we can study our planet's core a little bit more easier.
So we're going to like learn stuff from Mars and apply them to Earth, is what
Yeah.
you're saying? That's pretty cool. So we're looking at stuff outside of our planet to figure out our planet, basically.
Yeah, and also how our planet formed and where our planet's headed, because Mars was actually originally once like Earth. We don't know what happened to it, but it did support an atmosphere.
It's
and
theorized that it's much, much older.
Yeah, and potentially an asteroid hit it or something like that.
All manner of cool things. All right, up next, we have a bit of Grace Kelly.
I want to talk to you. This is Vernon Kay, and whenever I'm in Surrey, I always make sure that my wireless is tuned in to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. None of that AM rubbish. This is FM.
That was a bit of Feeling Good by Muse. So, Ryan, my man,
Yes.
we're searching on Mars through the mantle or the crust or whichever it may be. But what's the point? Like, okay, we live on Earth. You know, the ground's under our feet. We're fine. Like, why do we need to know what's going on?
Well, it's useful to figure out what's going on in our planet, because so inside our planet we've got something called the core. Inside our planet, it's a structure. We've got a crust on the outside, which is just a very thin layer of rock which move around under the mantle, which
And that's what we're standing on.
That's what we're standing on right now. Underneath that, there's the mantle, which is some thick sort of molten rock, which is all spinning around with big currents, in giant circular motion. And then below that, you have a liquid outer core, which is all molten metal. And then inside that, you have the pressure is so great that it's compressed everything to a solid, mainly iron core.
Mainly iron.
Mainly iron.
And what does that do then? Like, apart from just, sitting there?
Well, aside from sitting in there, it spins a bit.
Right. Is that because of the currents in the mantle, or?
Partly. This is one of the reasons we're sending Insight out to search, because we don't know. We know that we don't really know too much about inside the planet. We know that it's spinning. We know that it's doing some weird things while it's spinning. But aside from that,
weird things.
Yeah.
That's part of science, is finding out what the weird things are.
This weird thing protects us. This weird thing is the magnetic field. As it spins, because it's magnetic and electrical inside, it will create a magnetic field around the planet.
Right.
And this protects us from the high energy solar wind.
Oh, I remember. That's what we were talking about for the 2012 apocalypse. Say on December 21st, the world's going to end because the magnetic field's going to turn off or something like that, right?
Well, one of the theories about not one of the theories, one of the things we know that the core does is it moves, and that means the magnetic field of the Earth moves. Right. And every 200,000-ish years, the magnetic poles flip.
Wait, what? What?
Yeah, the magnetic poles flip. So the north would no longer be up near Greenland. It would one day in the sort of near future be down in Antarctica.
So you're telling me that all compasses on the planet are just going to be wrong?
One day. Well,
will this affect my phone signal? That's the question.
Probably quite a bit, unfortunately.
Foiled again.
However, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
We're overdue. It happens, according to geological records, every 200,000 years or so.
Okay.
The last one hasn't happened for about 87,000 years.
Oh, okay, right. So we got a bit of it. It's not going to happen tomorrow.
We're a little bit overdue. Well, it might start.
Oh god.
But
So you say geological records. Like, is there just some guy with a really old book? Like, what's the deal? How do we know what are these records?
We've taken rock samples, and you can see which way metals are aligned in the rock samples to kind of get a feel for which direction the north was back then. It's very clever stuff.
It sounds very clever.
It is, and we've seen that every 200,000 years or so we've swapped poles. Yeah. This sounds drastically bad. One day the poles are going to swap, but as it turns out, it's not just a overnight thing. You don't just wake up with
Compass the wrong way around.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time to meander around.
Okay.
But this is potentially bad because it means the Earth's magnetic field could be weaker as it's spinning.
Okay, so if it's weaker, what? We just, magnets aren't as strong? Like, what's the deal here?
Well,
like, the compasses kind of point north, but not really? Like,
yeah, that seems fine, but the bad thing is the magnetic field of the Earth is protecting us from harmful solar radiation. Harmful sun rays and harmful sun. When the sun ejects ejects plasma every now and then does it. Releases a ton of high energy particles into space.
Question, will I get a really good suntan if the magnetic field flips?
Yes.
Brilliant.
To the point where you could burn.
Oh, no, less
and
good.
all the electronics in the world could fry.
Can we back up? I don't like where this is going.
Because
it sounds very apocalyptic.
High energy particles from the sun will knock out the grid if the magnetic field for Earth isn't there. High energy particles can knock out grids.
This could genuinely kick us back a decent amount of years in
Could.
technology. Like there's a decent threat.
But like I said, it takes 1,000 years to meander. So at first we won't notice much. We'll just notice it slightly moving, and then as it moves towards the main continent. So as it's in at the equator, we'll obviously feel it then, but that could be in 500 years after it started or so.
So we just have to hope that the sun doesn't sneeze on us for the next 1,000 years.
Yes.
How often does the sun sneeze on us?
Quite a bit.
Right, so it's not really looking good.
Yeah, but for now we're fine, and also
because live in the now.
Because it's 1,000 years, we'll have time to prepare. If we see it starting to change, we've got time to prepare and build in surge protection from the sun to all our electronics, or to crucial systems.
Sunscreen on everything.
Yeah, just
SPF 5,000.
Smother the
electrical grid, everything.
Just everything. Just any servers. Just cover it in the stuff.
Get rid of all. Yeah, that's the best plan, and I think that's how we're going to survive the solar apocalypse that apparently is going to happen in the next 20 years or so.
Not
but
next 20 years.
Don't quote me on that, everybody.
Yeah.
Up next, we've got the Pretender by Foo Fighters and a bit of
103.2 FM.
That was Man on the Moon. So, Ryan, we're talking about magnetic fields on Earth and the reasons that we need to study them and all manner of stuff like that, and we're talking about the Mars rover. Does Mars have some kind of magic magnetic field that protects it? And if so, why is it so desolate as a planet compared to Earth? Like, why aren't there trees?
Well, you hit on the fact that it doesn't actually have a magnetic field anymore.
It just went away. Just like, right, I'm going for tea, see you later.
That's one of the reasons why we're studying it. We don't know where it went or why it went, but it did once have a magnetic field because it supported life. Well, not life, it supported oceans and an atmosphere. Okay.
So, like, any leading theories for it, or did it just, like, one day be like, nah, I'm out, bye?
Well, a leading theory is either runaway greenhouse effect. So it just got to the point where the greenhouse gases were too much, but that's more Venus's area.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, a asteroid crashing in and throwing off the planet when it was younger.
Oh, okay. So like there'd be it would hit it, throw it out of whack, and then the atmosphere would bleed off from that. Or...
Yeah, well, solar wind
the magnetic field.
Solar wind tends to bleed off the atmosphere as well, though. So Mars does have a very thin atmosphere.
Okay.
And that's
I've seen The Martian. I know things.
That's because it's losing atmosphere because the solar winds are ionizing and drifting and taking the atmosphere away, just drifting off into space.
Okay, so Mars is like a possible future for Earth then. It's like that kind of desolate rock with nothing there.
Potentially, if we get hit by a large enough asteroid, then probably.
Lovely. Well, wasn't the moon supposed to be something like that?
It was something like that. We think that the moon could have come from a large asteroid crash, which gave out a ton of debris into space and then collected into a moon.
Yeah, that's the theory I heard. Is like it was a secondary planet or something that was smaller in a
because our
similar
moon
orbit.
is the biggest moon to planet ratio in our system.
Yeah,
and it's really quite big, which is confusing because we have a big moon. No other planets do. What was special about us?
Yeah, it's also going away, which is really sad.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah, it's going away at the same rate as America is.
That.
Yeah, 4 centimeters a year. Yeah, I know some stuff.
You know some stuff.
every random tidbits of information. That's what I know.
That's all. So why does Mars still have an atmosphere then, though?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you said it's got a really thin one, right?
It's got a really thin one, but by now it doesn't have a magnetic field. It should have all the atmosphere stripped away.
Right. So why hasn't that happened?
So it hasn't happened because there is large deposits of metal underneath the surface.
Okay.
And those large deposits of metal are kind of acting like our core, but a lot weaker and creating a magnetic field.
Okay, so there's a really tiny magnetic field.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of these are large enough to just ward off a little bit of solar wind.
Oh, okay.
And that could be useful for when we live there next year.
Could we
Not next year.
Next year.
Next year, yes.
Yeah.
When we get to Mars next year.
Straight to Mars.
If we get to Mars, living underneath one of these giant magnetic shields would be good.
Do you reckon you could, in theory, like make an artificial magnetic field? Like, just because you say it's like a large clump of metal, and obviously that's a large clump of metal.
Find a massive asteroid of metal.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be one somewhere. Space is big.
Or get a lot of cooling and a lot of electronics and a lot of power generation. You could probably create a large electromagnetic field, which could, in theory, keep you a little bit more safe from the solar radiation. But we're talking solar radiation is very, very powerful, so you need very, very large amounts of
and
metal.
of course, that's not considering either the need for an atmosphere or anything like that. So.
Yeah, obviously you need to have a dome as well to keep the atmosphere in.
I've got the idea of like a localized magnetic field that protects like, I don't know, a square kilometer of Mars or something.
It would be great. Just have like small networks over the planet. One of the things that the ruler of Mars, or the future ruler of Mars, wants to do, Elon Musk, is terraform it, and so it's back to almost livable. Mm-hmm. We probably wouldn't be able to get a sustainable atmosphere on it, but we might be able to get liquid water.
Possibly.
And the best way to do that, apparently, is to nuke the poles.
What?
Because
nuke the poles?
The poles have a lot of ice in, so if you could warm that up, you could create some
obviously
form
nuclear
of
explosion is the only way to look. This is sounding very American.
It is sounding very American. He is very American.
True. So he wants to nuke the poles of the. Would that not affect? That could affect the core. You said the mantle is quite unstable and there's bits of metal floating around in it. Would that not mess with that somehow?
It probably wouldn't. But what it would mess with would be the water supply. You wouldn't be able to drink the water supply because, of course, it's got all the radioactive fallout in it.
That's a good point.
So. But at the minute, nukes are the only way we know how to release that amount of energy to melt all the poles that quickly.
I'm sure there's a scientist somewhere who's just like, nope, I'll find a way that doesn't involve nuclear like power or anything like that.
Hopefully one day.
Well, yeah. But still, that's a viable way to live possibly on Mars, or a solution to one of the problems to living on Mars then.
Yeah.
It's like just having a massive clump of metal.
Yeah.
And you're saying like making components. Like, did you hear there was a story about a guy in America who made a mini particle accelerator around a football field using just loads and loads of copper wire?
That's brilliant.
And he just accelerated particles around it.
I don't think he found much, but
no, he didn't do anything. But he was like,
he just had a particle accelerator.
Yeah, particle accelerator in like his back garden. As you do.
And
one of the cool things on the InSight probe is they're launching the first ever CubeSat to.
What is a CubeSat?
CubeSat is a very small sat, which is a satellite, which is just a cube, which we hope can.
Oh, it's like those things in Doctor Who, the random cubes that appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah. And hopefully
Great.
we can use it to send communications back to Earth, and if we can,
awesome.
It's a lot more efficient than using a large array of deep space network telescopes.
Oh, cool. Okay, so they're going to be having little QB satellites dotted around Mars based on this. What was it called? Probe called again?
InSight.
All right. Well, sounds fun. Anyway, next up we've got Hocus Pocus by Focus, which is probably the best named song ever.